What we wanted to talk to you about today was, we really want to know if we're going to have any type of physical problems with you guys, because we want to avoid that at all costs.
I'll tell you the best way to avoid that is to start adhering to the Constitution, recognize that there are rights here that you are violating, and simply do not show up. And all of that will be put to a stop that simply.
Okay.
And that's the easy way to handle that.
Well, I have to be honest, and I have to inform you that that's not an option.
So these people who hold themselves out to be patriots are not. They're nothing more than domestic terrorists.
This is 1776. No, it's not.
That's right.
It's a battle for our freedoms and liberty across the United States.
How many yards you think?
3.
You on the yards?
Yeah, see him walking?
If we don't stand up like we're doing here today, they'll just continue to trot over us.
Take our land back and declare freedom and liberty here in this land.
The county sheriff's felt to protect his people, and so we're here as we the people, taking back our rights.
County commissioner says Bundy supporters better have funeral plans.
This is not BLM land! Your court order does not apply! This is going down in history.
Stay calm.
The people or not, and you guys need to leave. Okay. You need to leave. That's the term.
So they can
leave. My name is Malheur. I am the president and co-founder of the Center for Self-Governance. We teach applied civics nationwide. On April 11th, 2014, I was teaching a level 3 class in Scottsdale, Arizona. And that evening when the class ended, one of my trainees and her son indicated that they were headed to Nevada for some event, some kind of standoff that I didn't know anything about. And she asked if I wanted to go because my level 2 class was canceled on Saturday in Prescott, Arizona. So after checking with Michelle Perkins, my fellow co-founder and board member, the agreement was that as long as I go, I would record all of the events that took place on April 12th, 2014. So my understanding of what led up to these events is that Cliven Bundy has a ranch full of 350 cattle. He has some sort of conflagration or disagreement with the Bureau of Land Management and the use of what are called public lands in what is the area known as the Virgin River Valley. Cliven Bundy fees for grazing on the land were going up. The BLM wanted the fees paid directly, and he was going through his county. The court says you have to pay so much, and then he wasn't paying, and as a result, the BLM got a court order to seize his cattle so that they could recoup the fines and recoup the grazing fees.
Yeah, any reason to be out here?
Same as you.
Just hanging out?
Yeah.
Okay. You all know that this is all part of a closure. If you feel like you want to express your First Amendment rights, we have a First Amendment area that's set up for you guys. If you want to go to your First Amendment area, then you're fine by going to the First Amendment area, okay?
For sure.
Well, do you know we have a First Amendment right area? Have you guys been out there to it? Okay. Well, that's our First Amendment area, okay? I understand that you guys have strong opinions about what the BLM and Park Service are doing out here, but this is not the place to do it.
You have the authority to arrest me. You don't have the authority to take me to jail. You might shoot me, but you really don't have the authority to do that either.
I think that the only way you're going to get through some of these people is just put the silver bracelets on them and take them, and then maybe they'll think twice about it.
The attorney's office just put out no arrest authority.
No arrest authority?
So
okay.
They don't want us to push it.
So even if you scratch them a ticket, they're still going to sit here?
No arrest authority is
no
what
arrest.
this?
They said cite them. If they refuse to give information, we'll figure out who they are. No arrest.
Good info.
All
Could you please leave?
I will. I am going to leave.
Okay, now.
But I can't leave without you.
Okay, he's a grown man.
He is.
Okay, he's being dealt with. Okay? Sir, this is the last time I'm going to ask you. So your first choice is to leave. Okay? It's your first choice, sir, to leave. To leave, okay? Sir? Sir, leave now. Leave now. Leave now. Leave now, sir. Leave. We're not playing this game all day. Leave. Okay? Now. I'm gonna drag you out of the car, okay? Here in a second. Leave now. Leave now. You have your children in the car. Don't go, okay?
You guys are...
Sir? Sir, don't do this in front of your kids, okay? Leave now, please. Okay?
Take the baby down. I am leaving. I'm in the process of leaving.
Go to the speed limit, okay? Go to the speed limit.
They wrestled him down, abused him, grind his face into the grass box, handcuffed him, and then they transferred him to Henderson, Nevada, and put him in the city jail there overnight. And then they picked him up that next day and took him to the federal prison. And he said, then all of a sudden, their attitude changed. They was very nice. They took off the shackles. They went and got him a snack lunch, and they turned him out on the streets of Las Vegas.
The BLM shows up with some contracted cowboys, and they began to rustle up all of his cattle.
Question as to why there's backhoes and the dump trucks, because there's a claim right now.
We're not killing cattle.
That's
we're not killing cattle.
We don't know that. That was the whole reason why.
I will tell you right now, we're not killing cattle.
Okay.
That is wrong.
Okay. That's you saying that.
No, and again, I'm the guy in charge.
Okay.
I do not lie. On behalf of the United States government, I do not lie.
There are no baby cattle left out there after you guys have been... None?
Not killing.
Okay.
They're doing every effort that if they separate a calf, they identify it.
What if I have proof to the contrary?
Well, again, to get every single baby cat that's dead.
Oh my goodness!
Is that what you're saying?
You guys are leaving them out there.
No, they're roping. If we gather in an area, the specific area we gather in, anyone that is separated is identified, and they go back and they collect it. Now, if there are baby calves in other areas, that very well could happen.
And then they took the remaining cattle and they moved them over to the wash. During the process of rustling the cattle, Ammon Bundy and some of his family got into some altercations with the BLM agents.
You better get your... Hey!
Get everything recorded. Just stand back. Come here. Stand with me. Just stand with me. Stand with me. It's the best thing you can do right here.
They threw down my aunt, dude.
Listen to me. Listen to me. You stay right with me. You stay right with me.
They threw down my aunt. They
listen to me.
My cousin 3 times.
Listen to me. You stay right with me, okay? Huh?
We got on video. Who's the aggressor here? Who's the aggressor?
Listen, let it go. Let it go.
Am
let
I
it go.
carrying an AR?
Let it go. 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 Seriously. Don't.
So at the point where they came and seized the cows, Cliven took to social media to ask for support, and people began to rally both online and then physically show up at his ranch. And so they set up a kind of a makeshift camp because there was rumors going around that they were going to storm the camp again.
The reason I went to Bunkerville myself was because of the First Amendment. It was the Constitution that drew a lot of us to Bunkerville. The BLM had set up an area off to the side of their cattle gathering. They had told anybody that wanted to come down and protest what they were doing, they were not allowed out where they were working, out where anybody could see them. They had to go to a First Amendment zone. Well, America is a First Amendment zone.
I didn't decide to go down until I saw that they had erected the free speech zones, because everybody saw that video and they knew people were coming to protest. So they put up those free speech zones, and they told everybody that they could protest inside those zones, and they were like miles away from the ranch. And then when people weren't inside those zones, they started arresting people.
Rumors going on, and we saw some video and stuff like that made us upset about what was going on down there, like the First Amendment zones.
Right.
People getting mistreated, some dogs sick on, saw old lady get clotheslined, and that was infuriating. And immediately in me, I was like, I got to get down there.
As we drove up I-15 towards the scene, we passed a truck stop, and at the truck stop I noticed numerous, it had to be more than 20 or 30 law enforcement vehicles of various kinds, trucks, cars, MRAPs, etc., and they were all stationed at this truck stop. The scene that we came up on was about 1,000 people all congregated around like a makeshift stage. And different people were speaking. Some were singing, and god-awful singing, but they were singing patriotic songs, and they were, some cowboys were getting up and giving it sounded like Western poetry. And then I turned to the right and I gazed up. There's a little hill overlooking the makeshift stage, and there was horses. And they were running some of the horses up the side of this very steep hill up to the top of a plateau, and they were overlooking the folks on the ground. Kind of about halfway up was this line of horses, and they were all facing the plateau where the horses with the flags were located. I ended up walking over to those folks and filming each of them. I was curious, what were they going to be doing? Where were they headed? I ended up interviewing this one person named Mel, and it turns out that this was Mel Bundy, one of Cliven Bundy's sons.
This is all our fault. I talked to Crescent Hardy, and he's a state assemblyman, and he's running for the 4th District here in Nevada. And I talked to him, and he says, a lot of people are frustrated with me as an official. And he's a local guy here, and he says it's all our fault. The deal is they all come to me with the complaints. So he's taking responsibility as a citizen, but he's also telling people that, if we don't stand up like we're doing here today, they'll just continue to trot over us. And so, yes, it is all of our faults. Every one of us. We've allowed this to happen.
So what do you recommend the average citizen do?
Educate themselves on constitutional matters.
Area right here, the small area here, was cordoned off with orange temporary light construction barriers marked for free speech zone. It just shows you how quickly your free speech zones can disappear when you allow them to be contained to a very small area. It's gone. What would you tell them to do?
Well, I'd tell the governor, I'd say, hey, you back up Nevada law and you take care of your brand inspector, the Department of Agriculture. They're supposed to be protecting my property, not destroying them, not signing my name on the bottom of brand certificates.
That's out here, right?
That's correct. So those water rights were either purchased or inherited from, and originally came from homesteading, okay? And they're throughout this land here, and we have done improvements over the last 100 years and piped those lines down all through this country with tanks and pipes, and the wildlife and the cattle have used that water for 100 plus years. They're tearing those out now. The reason they're doing that is because that is the one thing that ties those rights to this land. See, the grazing rights are also tied to the water. Mm-hmm. Okay, so if they have any if we have any legal right besides just state taking over its sovereignty, which obviously we want to happen, but it's tied to those waters. And they know that. And that's why when they're tearing these out and they're coming down, that's why one dump truck and a backhoe has 13 armed vehicles on it, because they did not want us to see what was in the back of that, because they are destroying those waters.
The sheriff came in the morning to address the crowd and tell them that the powers that be had graciously consented to allow the last rancher remaining in business in the area to continue grazing. Never mind that he had had most of his cattle rustled by the army of BLM contractors for the past several weeks.
With that being said, I believe a press release has already been put forth that the BLM is going to cease this operation. The Gold Butte allotment will be reopened to the public.
Much to the surprise of the sheriff, Bundy said that wasn't good enough.
Sheriff, this is what we the people are asking this morning. Disarm the Park Service.
Right. Yeah.
And Red Rock Park and all other parks that the federal government claims they have jurisdiction over.
Yeah.
Take your county bulldozers and loaders and tear down the entrance places, where they ticket us and where they enter us and make us citizens pay their fees. You take down you get the county equipment out there and tear those things down this morning.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
What they wanted was for him to exercise his authority as the only lawful law enforcement in the area, and to disarm the BLM agents and contractors who had been pointing their sniper rifles at the protesters and ranchers, confiscate their weapons, tell them to leave the area, and then stack the weapons on stage. Bundy gave him 1 hour to do so.
The sheriff had just left just before I got there, the sheriff for Clark County, and Cliven Bundy had asked him to go to the Bureau of Land Management and ask them to disarm, because they were going to go after 60 Minutes and retrieve all of his cows from a corral somewhere on I-15. And so now this became a lot more serious to me, because they were in a deadline. But I thought they were just having a rally or something. But they had a deadline, and about 9:30 a.m. Cliven Bundy says to the crowd, "Well, it doesn't look like we have a sheriff here." And then he goes on, he says, the governor of Nevada has instructed all the cows to be moved to California. And so now I'm like, okay, this is extremely serious, because now they've gone from rallying and patriotic songs and poetry to the end of this deadline, and they are now going to move this body politic, this body of people, to another location. And it turns out there wasn't a lot of media there, but there was somebody from the Nevada, like Las Vegas TV station, and she was trying to interact with them, and Cliven was saying things like, we don't recognize, I think he was referring to the BLM's jurisdiction or something to that effect, and then she ends up talking with one of Cliven's sons.
And we can only stretch ourselves so thin. My cameraman isn't even here yet.
So maybe we need to rely on another radio.
Yeah. Cut us some slack. We can't turn on a dime. We can't be everywhere at once. If we're going to get to that,
but isn't that what they pay you for?
We can't be somewhere else.
Just about 5 or 10 minutes later, that's when Cliven Bundy says,
So I guess we had presents. We thought we had a sheriff here, but evidently we don't have a sheriff here. His 5 minutes is up. Now we're going to go and take our land back and declare freedom and liberty here in this land. Is God going to be with us? Do we all feel good?
And I'm thinking, how are you going to do that? How do you take your lands back and declare freedom? You guys are not well armed. You've asked for this other entity to be disarmed. So how are you going to accomplish that?
One thing I'm going to do, Cliven Bundy's going to turn cattle out of his farm. They're going to go out on the open range where they belong. And we're going to go and take the rest of them out of the compound krills up here above the freeway. This should be the governor of Nevada's job, but he's actually inspected these cattle to go to California. So if they haven't went to California yet, let's go get those cattle, and all we got to do is open the gate and let them back down on the river, and they're home.
That's it. As soon as he says that, everyone starts moving. I was there from 8:30 to then. I was like, where are they going? And so I walk up to the road and head up back towards the interstate. It's about 1.5 miles away. And the horses that were on top of the plateau, they start coming down, and I asked them, I said, where are you guys going? Nobody would answer me.
So where are you guys headed?
No one would tell me where they were going. And then they turned up this dirt road. It looks like they're headed toward the east, toward Utah. And none of the cars and none of the people on foot are following them. They're all getting into their vehicles and they start driving away. So I turn to one of the cars. It's like the 6th car in the convoy. And I'm like, hey, can I hop on? And they're like, yeah, of course. Here I am, this total stranger, hopping in this back of this truck with these people. They head towards the same direction I'm headed. And they come back to Interstate I-15, exit 112, and they turn east. And as we turn east, of course, there's other traffic merging with them coming from Las Vegas. And I'm still wondering, where are we going? I know that the horses are parallel to me to the south by about 1 mile or so, going up that dirt road. And I'm wondering where they're going. And apparently everybody else knows where they're going except for me. And I turn around and I'm filming east, and the traffic is starting to pick up because merging Las Vegas traffic is catching up to ours.
Watch these hills, boys, watch these hills.
And we pull up onto the scene where I can see on the westbound traffic towards Las Vegas that there's a large number of vehicles kind of off on the shoulder of I-15. And then our traffic begins to pull over on the opposite side, the eastbound traffic. So this is the traffic going towards Utah. And everyone starts getting out of their vehicles, and anyone who was at the Bundy rally, they're all pulling into this side area, and it creates quite a traffic jam. I go to the middle of the median and start recording because on the other side I notice that there's some kind of government vehicles and some kind of agents or officials who are controlling government. And then on the Bundy side of the interstate, they're all collecting, and there's like a traffic pattern, and you can tell that there's a traffic jam starting to build up. Now, at this point, there's nobody, no law enforcement kind of government vehicles or anything of the nature in the middle of the median separating the two gatherings, except for, I think, a Channel 8 Nevada News truck. And I don't know about what time, but you could see in the distance that whole contingent of law enforcement vehicles that I saw at the truck stop pulling up in a huge convoy, and they pull into the median between the two entities, what I perceived as maybe the federal government agents, I'm not sure at the time, and then the Bundy people and all of their vehicles and rally supporters on this side, and then the Las Vegas Police Department pulls into the middle.
It's tyranny, guys.
I noticed that they formed into what's called a serpentine defensive position. And a serpentine defensive position essentially is a triangle. And the way it's organized is it's defending the other side of I-15. And it's designed to split the Bundy forces if they were to decide to cross the median.
This is a no-fly zone, but they do have their own planes. There's a plane up there. Okay, this is a situation that's developing outside the Bundy Ranch. We've got people who are walking out here on the range. We're going to follow them. I haven't seen any BLM people yet, and we do have a plane that is flying overhead. This was declared a no-fly zone yesterday. The same sort of treatment they give to the president when he arrives in an area.
and they put it on for pretty much an unprecedented amount of time, for 30 days. So here we have essentially the government of America stepping this up as if this was a foreign occupation.
The traffic jam is now, it's backed up. You can't even see the end of it going all the way back to mile marker 112, and we're at mile marker 114, so it's 2 miles, and all I can see is traffic backed up. But you can hear sirens. Eventually, I see the Nevada Highway Patrol pull up, and they pull about 50 yards in front of the traffic jam, and they block the traffic. And some vehicles kind of weave their way through. So now you've got the State Highway Patrol, you've got the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department, and on the other side, what I now find out is it's the federal government through Bureau of Land Management and several other agencies. So you've got 3 levels of government. You've got the governed from the Bundy rally, and then you have the regular traffic from Las Vegas going to Utah, all in this one spot.
How many lines are left? I know you guys need to, I think people could, we're going to have you back up some, okay? Okay, so we don't need all the long guns or anything. Hey, don't take orders from that outfit. Hey guys, don't take orders from that outfit. 333, let's get some of our people up in the front, and let's move the BLM folks back if we can. Say again? Let's get our folks up here to interact with these folks instead of these BLM.
Control, BLM. BLM. Yes, ma'am, just be advised. We understand that you guys are already en route to our ICP. Just want to confirm that is the case. Dr. Affirmative.
I can hear people talking. We're blocked in. We're trapped here. What do we do? Where do we go? They're having all these conversations. It's kind of chaotic. And then I notice a contingent of Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. And these law enforcement officers start walking towards the crowd. And as they walk towards the crowd, I start moving towards them because I want to, who are these guys? And I find out that it's the number 2 county sheriff, the deputy county sheriff for Clark County. He is walking towards the crowd and he's looking for somebody. And I hear a little bit of them saying Bundy brothers, Cliven Bundy, that kind of thing. So I assume they're going to look for one of the Bundys. They end up finding Dave Bundy, one of Cliven Bundy's sons. One of the comments made by Dave Bundy's wife.
Thank you, officers.
She says, "Thank you, officers. Thank you for doing something." And I can't really make it out in the recordings, but it was really striking to me that they weren't yelling at the law enforcement officers. They were thanking them. And I wasn't sure what they were thanking them for because these people seemed kind of agitated. And so I wasn't sure, why was this side thanking those law enforcement officers when there was agitation going on? Those officers left. And at some point, the people realized they were in the wrong spot. Whose responsibility is it that we've come to this point where the federal government is out of control?
Well, certainly you could say that ultimately it is we the people's fault for electing yellow-bellied politicians.
What do you suggest to the average citizen coming to this point? How do we avoid coming to this point, or what would you recommend to them?
Well, you got to stand up for your personal rights to begin with and elect honest officials.
There was over 100 BLM agents out there. There was SWAT teams. There was Park Service, and there was Clark County Sheriff's Department, Metro. Everything was still calm for quite a while. And then all of a sudden a woman runs down the road screaming, "They're getting ready to shoot Americans. We need help with the wash. They're pointing guns at Americans." And that's basically what led to the entire standoff.
People started running eastbound towards Utah. So I just started running with them. Where are they going? And they run about a quarter of the mile. And people started gathering underneath a bridge. And I'm standing on top of this bridge. And so you can imagine it's got the concrete barriers on either side. And there's a very small shoulder. And I'm looking to the my north, and I can see the other westbound lane of I-15. And there's a gate underneath this like wash. And behind it are a whole bunch of these government vehicles and people behind it. They're all tacked out they've got their assault rifles, they've got their web gear on, they've got their assault helmets, and they've got special shields, and I mean, they just look like they're ready for war.
He's not backing down. All that stuff they said over there is bullshit. Yeah, they're not going.
Yeah, they claim, we didn't see anything, but before we got here, they claimed that they pulled guns on the civilians.
They're violating the law when they're violating state law.
Once you get on BLM, they have a court order.
This ain't BLM, they were supposed to leave.
That's what I'm saying, this ain't BLM.
They were ordered by the sheriff.
This is not BLM land! It is Nevada Department of Transportation land! Your court order does not apply!
People are starting to gather from underneath the wash, and some people were on top. And I'm standing there filming this, and I see this one guy walking up towards the gate, and you can hear him yelling, you know, "Are you really going to shoot these people? Are you guys really going to shoot these people?"
These people don't want to get hurt. Are you really going to shoot these people if they move forward, yes or no? Sir, we can't hear your announcement that far away. We can't hear it. That's why I'm coming to you. They cannot hear what you're saying through the tunnel here.
You can hear the microphone from the federal agents, and they're saying, "Step back, we have a court order, this is U.S. territory, do not approach the gate," in real serious tones. And people are gathering on top of the bridge and underneath the bridge in the wash. I noticed some movement about, it looks like to me like a mile to my right on top of a major plateau.
There's a sniper up there.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. Did you see him on video?
I zoom in and I notice that they're snipers. These people are on top of the plateau and they've set up sniper positions. And then I hear kind of a cheer from the crowd, and then I notice those horses that had gone up the power line road, they now have met up with the people underneath the wash, and they start advancing toward the gate.
You're gonna have to arrest us all or shoot us all!
The crowd is now moving forward toward the barrier. The police have been telling everybody they are going to shoot if we don't move back.
Word had not yet reached the hundreds of protesters who were blocking traffic to Interstate 15. The battle was over.
There's protesters out there blocking the highway right now. Are they aware that the deal has been made?
I don't know. I don't think they know. The deals are just coming through to me just within the last few minutes.
People are moving forward with their hands in the air, holding flags with both hands in the air. It's a mixture of people on foot, as you can see, people on foot, and cowboys.
Now there's this standoff taking place. You have this kind of gaggle of horses, and they're spread into kind of a crescent moon, and there's people intermingled with them, and you can hear the people shouting, "Open the gates, open the gates." There's people standing right next to me really loud, "Open the gates, this is the United States." I started to notice now a couple of people trickling in on the Bundy rally side of the gate. A couple of people with long weapons. And now I'm extremely concerned because one of them is standing right next to me. He pointed his weapon through a crack in the concrete barriers down towards the government officials. And there's this lady with her daughter standing next to him. And on top of the plateau and down below, they had snipers, and their weapons were pointed at our direction. And so I pointed to the lady toward this person with his weapon, and she noticed it and immediately got away. And so now you had on their side, their weapons pointed up at the Bundy folks, and now you had somebody on their side with his weapon pointed at them. If a car backfired, if someone broke a glass, or what if he decided to just go ahead and start shooting? What if the law enforcement agents decided they were going to see him as a threat and start shooting? The majority of those people, I mean the super majority of those people in the wash were unarmed, and they had nowhere to go because if you turned to the left or the right, there was embankments. The only way they had to retreat was to go south. It would have been a massacre. And so I'm super concerned now for not just my safety, but even the people's safety down there, the cars that were driving by on the interstate. And I looked over the barrier and I noticed now somebody walking up toward the gate, and they're having a conversation.
To find a peaceful resolution to this. Don't escalate it down here. Allow me time to talk upstairs with Metro. All right, push these people back up off the gate. Push them back up off the gate. We're going to work to release these cattle. Listen to me.
I understand that what you're doing, and you will get that time.
Okay.
But we're not playing here. And
I know, I get that. But can we push them back up off the gate for right now? Let me work with you and you. I'll allow you two to come in with me.
We're not going in there. We're staying out here.
No, you got my word that no one's taking you in custody. If you want to stay there, that's great. They're getting your dad up top.
Do your thing.
No, they're getting your dad
and
up top.
We'll make sure that we're here as a presence.
Help. Listen.
You are on Nevada State property. And it is time. No, there's a time. The time is now.
We're doing that.
No, the
but
time
you need
is
to push
now.
these people back so they can do it safely. Push them back so they can do it safely.
Saying that because when you go through, trying to say about that. Let's go back a little bit farther. What are they saying?
The underpass right there that gives us plenty of space, 30 minutes to work. I just got to push them back.
Come on,
whoever's in charge. But I can't disengage all these people if those people are that close. You get that. So I got to push them back so it's safety, it's peaceful.
You're my lethal. I want you guys to be ready for second wave, okay? When I call in second wave, come in. Okay.
You want me to switch out with my rifle?
Yeah, switch out with your rifle.
Romo's going to set the forces.
Percussion, because the percussion...
Are you people stupid or what? Just let them do this, you know? Just...
Fat dude, right behind the tree. He's got a long gun. You come find me and you don't have hell to pay.
Interesting tactic. If it works, he's a genius. If not, we're gonna...
slid down. Pretty much a shoot protest question. Yeah, I'd like to go. Do you? Sorry. Got it. There's no gun there. No gun. No gun. He's just holding his back. He's standing like a sissy.
He must not be married.
Shooting his dog first.
All they need is one of them to fire. They know it's gonna We gotta have fire this away.
I'm recording, by the way, guys, so. Yeah, I don't know if it's code 4. They're not actively assaulting us yet. We're getting the final approval for you guys to come in here, or with some organization, and we'll go up, we'll get the cattle, and we'll drive them out. So
we're going to be here.
I know. I'm good. I don't have a problem with that.
I appreciate you.
No, don't worry.
Thank you.
So I just wanted to come down here and at least let you know, hey, we're working on it.
Would you stay here?
Yeah, of course.
Please stay here.
Yeah, we'll stay here. So Ryan's going to come down with Mark, and then Ryan will explain everything to you again, and then what we need to do is develop a plan and go execute. You good? All right. All right.
All right. Hey, listen up. Good. I'll back it up. You guys got it. We're gonna have to back down the road. Back it up. Nice and orderly. Okay. You need to ask permission. I'm asking you. I think we're good. We're good. Greg. Stand 3, direct to the enemy. And then, behind us, just hang out. Get back so we can't throw shit at you. And then, I don't think anybody will shoot at you or anything. So, you good with that? Yep. Okay.
Hey! They promised to leave and release the cattle in 30 minutes. But they want us to get back farther so they can disengage. So let's give them that chance.
Then rumors started passing through the crowd, and people started saying, hey, there looks like the BLM and the other federal agencies are going to back off. They're going to retreat. And I'm like, that's nuts. That's never happened in U.S. history, where you have the governed approach a barrier, and then the local, state, and federal law enforcement will back away. That's just unheard of. And so I decided at that point, as I watched a deputy sheriff and his, apparently his bodyguard, I'm not sure, but someone coming with him, he came into the mix, and I realized, okay, this is genuine. Now you have local law enforcement and I'm not sure about state, but federal law enforcement now in the negotiation process. So things are going to calm down. We're going to have some safety. That's when I decided to go down into the wash myself, and I began to film what was going on amongst the crowd, as well as trying to get footage of what was happening with the law enforcement officials.
Our units have backed up. Just give them some space in hopes that they'll disperse.
103, 102. No. All right, about 20 minutes. Let's see if we can get those guys out of here in the next 20 minutes. All right. 103, 102. Go. All right, do you know why they're not rolling yet? If they ain't got an idea? I gave him the 20 minutes 15 ago, and he went down your direction, so he's down there somewhere. All right, I told Sal that we were bringing the Cowboys up at 2 o'clock. All right, I'm going to go try to find Dan real quick then. it's going to take them 30 minutes to get all these vehicles rolling, so they got to start rolling now.
Respect your authority as county. Stay calm. They're about halfway packed up in camp. Got it? They're going to finish up and leave. Hey, they're not coming back, are they?
You can hear somebody ironically say, "They're not coming back, are they?" And Mel kind of says, "I don't know, but let's just stay calm and wait." So now everyone's just kind of standing around waiting. And I end up filming the law enforcement officials from the local government going back and forth between the federal officials and this gaggle of governed. And you could see that now government was functioning differently than it was on top of the interstate, and differently than it was in this armed standoff. Things had changed. Sometime later, you can see Mel coordinating with one of his brothers, Ammon Bundy, just what to do next. And then eventually Ryan Bundy shows up. And during that whole time, it seems like the people who were coordinating the Bundy horses were telling the people to back off the sides of the wash, move back to certain places, and so they began to organize. It seemed to be in preparation for getting their cows. All of a sudden, people started cheering, and the cowboys and their horses were making their horses do a little turn and waving their flags and things. And I turned to the right, and I saw for the first time in my life federal agents retreating in an official retreat. This isn't okay, we're leaving now. No, this is an official retreat, which means they still perceive that anyone on this side of the fence is a threat. And so eventually they completely backed away from that area. And Ryan Bundy got on top of it looks like a power-generated lamp post.
The West has now been won!
The West has now been won. And standing behind him was 3 different government law enforcement agents. One was federal and the other 2 were definitely local.
They have agreed to pull out. They're going to start loading their equipment immediately. And it's going to take them more than 30 minutes, but they said they'd have their first vehicles going out in a few minutes to show that they're moving. Good, thank you. Then we're going to go in and we're going to open the gates and bring the cattle down. Bring the cattle down! Okay, when that happens, we're going to take the horses up and bring them down to this bridge. We don't want anyone under the bridge to spook the cattle from coming under here. I want everybody on foot below the bridge along both sides of the wash and stay wide. You're welcome to go all the way to the river, along the river, all the way to the ranch. Okay? Proper jurisdictional authority has been restored here. Yes! Yeah! Okay, so we will remain peaceful. There's been no shots fired. There's not going to be any shots fired. That's right. Yeah! Okay.
The Bundys asked everyone in the wash to go on top of the bridge and not be in the wash. They lined up behind the Las Vegas Police Department vehicle, and then they started moving towards that campsite that I filmed. While they were moving towards the camp, all the vehicles were passing right next to me and at a high rate of speed. They were BLM vehicles, they were unmarked law enforcement vehicles, and they were full of federal agents. I counted 180 vehicles, and I filmed this for probably an hour and a half of vehicles leaving from that camp. And eventually they started slowing down. I think it's because a lot of people were standing on the highway, and at some point I saw the cows coming through the wash, and I started filming the cows. The irony to me was they were passing the gate. and people were gathering in the wash, and they were just sitting there. The striking thing to me was nobody was screaming anymore, no one was yelling, everyone was really quiet, just sitting around watching cows. It's just not, that's not my background in farming or agriculture. And so I started filming them watching cows. And I got footage of Ammon Bundy, and it looks like some of his brothers and sisters and some cousins, and they were all standing around watching. And he's carrying the sign that was originally on the fence that says, you know, closed area, you know, no trespassing. And they're just, the only thing you can hear in the footage is the cows mooing. It's such a stark contrast between the armed standoff where people were shouting and you could hear this megaphone, and now everyone's just sitting around watching cows running towards the Virgin River Valley. And then everybody started to leave. Of course, now I had to find a ride. So at this point, I'm now walking up the dirt road that the horse posse had come down originally in the morning. And I'm like, this is going to be a really long walk. And this guy pulls up next to me, and I'm like, hey, can I grab a ride? And he lets me in. To this day, I have no idea who the guy is. And we drove back to the Bundy Ranch rally point, if you will, and they had barbecue going, and you could smell hamburgers and hot dogs, and the Cliven Bundy was speaking on the megaphone.
So, you know, maybe it's not any of us, we can't take credit, any of us can take credit for what's going on today. We're going to have to look up a little higher, up there where those birds are flying this morning, and thank our Heavenly Father. We want you to stay around, and we got to sort of group as a family. But remember, this is a we the people thing. We're going to try to get you some food here, and let's spend the evening and enjoy it, and let's picnic a little bit. And if we got some entertainment, some music, everything volunteer, and let's enjoy. Let's stay here until dark. And if we're not sure that we got all these cattle. We know the sheriff didn't do his duty today, and we got a lot of work to do.
Then Mel Bundy's wife gets up to speak, and it's one of the most dynamic speeches I've ever heard.
And I don't cry. Ask anyone in my family, but when we were on that mountain today, and we got to the top of the mountain and we prayed, and my brother-in-law gave the prayer, and he asked that we be protected and that our forefathers would be there to defend our constitutional rights. And I will tell you, I will testify 100% that we were. We took that horse, and we were in such a rush to go gather those cows, we didn't even realize we had a riderless horse, and we took them with us. We took our forefathers with us. And we took that horse up that mountain, and I will tell you that when we sat there at that gate and people were warning us to turn around because we were going to be killed, we had overwhelming feeling of peace up there. Yeah. And those men that fought and died for this country so that we can enjoy our freedoms right now were there with us. Yeah. They want us to be free, and they appreciated that we all stood and fought and took our lands back. And I don't want any of you, I packed this thing off that mountain, and I want you to look at it and remember the sacrifices that we made. Next time, Never let this happen again. Never let our lands be littered with this garbage again. And don't you forget the emotions here this week. And remember our Constitution and all those men that died for us so that we could be here right now.
And she held up the sign that was on the fence. She says, and don't let this garbage ever litter our lands again. And remember our Constitution and all the men who died for it. And then the crowd, the rally people really cheered one more time, and then the rest of the time was people just sitting around like a picnic or something. And then for me, I had to get back because I had to teach more Center for Self-Governance classes.
Bundy said talks with Sheriff Gillespie fell short, and that it was Bundy's team of supporters who rounded up the cattle to take back to his property. The state disagreed, saying they negotiated a deal to give back the herd.
I'm not the hero. Those citizens that went up there and did the work and suffered whatever suffering they've been through, they're the heroes of America, not Cliven Bundy.
Our county sheriff, as Lauren Rosella mentioned, Doug Gillespie, played a key role in brokering the deal between the Bundy family and the BLM. In fact, he's been working on this behind the scenes for years now. Before protesters stormed the freeway, Gillespie worked to publicly negotiate with the Bundy family in front of his supporters. This morning, he told them as he addressed Bundy that the two would work together to find a solution. And Governor Brian Sandoval weighed in on all of this by issuing a statement. It reads in part, given the circumstances, today's outcome is the best we could have hoped for. I appreciate that the BLM was willing to listen to the concerns of the people of Nevada.
The fact that nobody died is a phenomenon. And there's probably many reasons why they didn't, but one of the most striking reasons to me is because the governed chose to challenge the boundary. And the boundary in this case was the physical fence. And the irony is that Cliven Bundy was not in the gaggle of people and horses. So these people were willing to die, in effect, for someone else's cows. Which means it must have been bigger than the cows, right? It must have been something more than the cows to these people.
Our jury has been told that this was all about cows. This situation had absolutely nothing to do with cows, for a vast majority of us. The reason I went to Bunkerville myself was because of the First Amendment. It was the Constitution that drew a lot of us to Bunkerville. The overreach of the federal government.
And I heard different people saying, I'm from Delaware, I'm from Massachusetts, I'm from Utah, I'm from Washington. So it's obviously people from different states. And so their willingness to challenge the boundary, to die for someone else's cows, and to press those other natural-born persons on the other side of the fence who are literally government agents, to put them in the position where they had to choose whether they are going to shoot these people or not. That's profound. And to have been there to see it for myself. The other thing that was very profound to me was when they began to negotiate and when the local law enforcement became the middleman. The architects of the United States designed a system that was supposed to function that way, where we have multiple layers of government so that you as the governed, you have more than one source of remedy. And in this case, more than one source of remedy manifested itself. And so I'm surprised that nobody lost their life. I'm surprised that no one lost their liberty that day. And I'm surprised that the property got returned. As in most cases, when the governors are using government, the governed will lose.
Hello everyone, my name is Lavoy Finicum.
They're shooting. Is he dead?